Well, hello everyone. Ogre27 Kane here today, and we're gonna do a review of Eldrand for the Nintendo Switch. Let's do a little bit of an overview and figure out what we're talking about today. So this game is a Metroidvania with a pixel art style and a heavy emphasis on exploration and combat. There are a lot of elements borrowed from other games, but none of it fits together in a bad way, and I think the game is well executed. The only thing that I really didn't like about it was how short it is. It takes between 5 and 10 hours to beat this game. So without further ado, let's start out with the gameplay. So being a Metroidvania, you expect it to follow a certain format, if you will, and have certain locked areas, certain places that you can't go until you find new upgrades and different abilities. This game has a really fun feature of being very open-ended and giving you a lot of choice to what you want to do. As you'll see in the video here, most of my gameplay revolves around me playing things in the wrong order. I beat the second boss first and the first boss second, and so on and so forth. The really cool thing about the gameplay in this though is none of it's too punishing, and if you really want to spend the time and go that route, you can. There are some gated places, and there are some abilities that you have to get, such as an air dash or a double jump, but they're not a huge hindrance to where you can go right away. They only show up once you have the branching path in option. Now, you could soft lock yourself, I would think, in a certain way if you got too far in one direction or another, but the game seems to be very well tested, and I never had that problem once. Any situation I got myself into, I could get out of. Another really cool gameplay feature to this is how it has a lot of elements such as equipping new items and weapons, having magic, and its own stats RPG elements to it. The game really wants you to explore and search for these things, and it really encourages you to do a lot of repeat combat. There's a lot of learning involved with the combat too, so speaking of which, let's move to that. So the combat in this was really punishing at first, because it takes a minute to fully grasp how it works. You have your attack button and you have multiple weapons that you can equip and work in tandem almost like a combo. You also have a shield here which works for limited use in blocking and has its own stats too. But what was really most confusing for me was how the dodge mechanic works in this. It does not give you any iframes and you cannot move through enemies with it. It is more designed like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, where you use your backdash to get away from enemies. This mechanic rolled in with a lot of Dark Souls elements really confused me at first, and it took a while to get a hold of. Once I did though, I was home free. Now, there are shops like you're seeing right here where you can buy new weapons and armor to upgrade with, but the game really encourages you to explore to find a lot of those weapons and armor. The game has a lot of really interesting elements too, and how it really pushes you to learn the pattern of the enemies, and in specific, definitely the bosses. I had to play each boss, aside from maybe 2 or 3 of them, multiple times to begin to learn their pattern. Because it starts out as almost impossible and you think you need to power level, but in fact it's really just about you taking your time and learning the mechanics of the game. So I highly encourage that you give this game a little bit of time and really fully grasp and understand its combat to dig in and really know what it's trying to show you. I highly enjoy it though, so let's move on to story now. So the story in this game is pretty basic. You're an adventurer / bounty hunter, and you get this contract from this priest to take on this evil cult leader named Sirthris. He's on this island and you're sent out on your journey, and lo and behold, your ship wrecks and you wake up stranded. You start the journey out with just a sword and then find your shield and slowly move on to upgrading and finding new abilities and new magics. But the whole purpose of the game is really trying to figure out who Sirthris is and where he's at. You come to this village that you're seeing right here, and it basically becomes your base of operations. It has a blacksmith, has a potion salesman, and quest givers, and so on and so forth. The game really heavily relies on you moving the story forward and understanding what it's trying to say. So let's move to controls and audio now. So we're going to start off with the audio, because the audio in this game is absolutely fantastic. Both the soundtrack and the sound effects are great, and they fit together really well. I really enjoyed a lot of the boss music in this game, so I chose to feature one of the boss fights for it. Here it is. absolutely love the audio. I have nothing negative to say whatsoever about it. But let's talk a little bit about controls, because I do have some minor issues here. One of the most frustrating things to me, and you may have witnessed it a few times in this video, is how when you're moving and you're jumping, your momentum with the direction that you're facing is not reflected by that movement. So if you jump up in the air and you turn the other direction, you will still be holding your shield in said direction while you're attacking if that's the button you choose with it. This makes for some really confusing movement in the heat of combat, to where I was constantly attacking backwards instead of forwards because I wasn't paying full attention to this. It's a very minor detail and something that I've never really fully paid attention to in any video game, but I do have to mention it here because the combat is so precise that when you make these stupid little errors, you can only punish yourself, but it also is reflective of how different the control scheme is with this game. Very much like the dash button too, it is not what you think it is and takes a little while to get used to. Having your momentum and your movement and your direction all separated from each other was just something I wasn't prepared for. So, with that out of the way, there's nothing really else I need to say. Let's move on to graphics and animations. So let's talk about the graphics first. If you know anything about me, you know I absolutely love the pixel art aesthetic. And I'm a huge fan of the whole mythical, medieval feel, if you will, to a Metroidvania. I love Castlevania, and I love Bloodstained. Anytime a game really includes these vibes, allow them a lot of opportunity and ability to include the mythical creatures and monsters that you expect to see in these. This game has a ton of huge sprites, if you will, and some of the big bosses, and it has some really good high quality models in terms of the enemies themselves. There are a few minor frame rate hiccups here and there. None of them really affected my gameplay too much. It was kind of a little jilting in some of the later combat, but a lot of the issues I had were generally my own fault. The game does look a little low budget, and it does look like it was built by a smaller team, but in a Metroidvania, as long as they can convey the aesthetic they're going for, and in this one in specific, it's horror. Tons of horror elements, and everything is perfectly conveyed. If you're a little squeamish around blood and guts, I might recommend that you stay away from this one, as it is extremely prevalent in it. But if you like the aesthetic, totally check this one out. It's beautiful. So let's do conclusion now. So in conclusion, this game is not what I expected. I expected a direct Dark Souls clone with very little deviation, and that's not what I got. This game is very unique, and it has its own feel and vibe to it, its own tone, its own art, its own aesthetic, and its own style of exploration. I really enjoyed the combat to it once I got used to it, and I feel like this game will be a hidden gem. I picked it up for $30 physically on eBay, but I know it's not going to stick around that price forever, and it will disappear, if you will. So, check this game out. Even if you have to buy it digitally or on a different console, it's totally worth your time and your money. So without further ado, thank you for watching this video. It was a blast to make. I upload every single Monday. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. And have a great rest of your day. This is Ogre27 Kane, signing out.